All right, let's dive into a really foundational question of law and power. We're talking about the state concession theory, and it's all about one critical question. Who gets to decide what or who legally counts as a person?
Okay, so let's kick things off with a question that sounds kind of simple, right? Can a group of people, say a company, a club, maybe a university, can they actually become a person in the eyes of the law? And the answer, which might surprise you, is yes. It's how that happens that makes this whole thing so fascinating.
So the official term for this is a juristic person. And honestly, you can think of it like a legal superpower. It's what lets a whole group of people act as a single individual. They can own stuff, sign contracts, even sue or be sued. Without it, well, without that status, an organization doesn't have any real power. It's really just a bunch of people.
Okay, so here's what we're going to cover. First, why this whole person thing is such a big deal. Then we'll look at the idea that the state has to give its stamp of approval. After that, we'll check out an opposing theory, put them side by side, and finally, we'll poke some holes in that state-first idea.
All right, first up, why would any group even want this? I like to think of it as a legal VIP pass. It totally unlocks a new level of what an organization can do.
And this status, it's absolutely essential for getting anything done in the modern world. It's the difference between being a casual book club and a registered nonprofit that can, actually rent an office or apply for a grant. It gives you real power and legitimacy.
So this brings us right to the heart of the whole thing. If this legal personhood is so critical, then who gets to hand it out? Where does that authority actually come from? That's the big question we're diving into.
Well, one huge answer to that question is what's known as the concession theory. And yeah, the name kind of gives it away. It puts one player firmly in charge, and that's the state. The core idea is pretty simple. A group is not a legal person unless the state says so, period. This whole theory popped up when powerful nations were forming and, they wanted to keep everything under their thumb. The political goal was obvious. Make sure no other group could get too powerful without the government's official blessing. And it's tied to this other idea called the fiction theory, which basically says, hey, a corporation isn't a real person with flesh and blood, so its legal personality is just a fiction, created and controlled by the state.
And that quote really nails it. According to this theory, being a juristic person isn't a right you have. Nope, it's a privilege. The state holds all the cards. It gets to decide who plays and who watches from the sidelines.
But of course, not everyone buys this top-down approach. So a challenger enters the ring, the realist theory, and it throws a pretty powerful counterpunch at that whole idea of absolute state control.
See, the realist theory flips the script. It argues from the ground up. It says, look, if a group acts like a real single entity, if it has its own goals, its own structure, and it functions as one unit, then it is a person. The law doesn't create it, the law just recognizes the reality that's already there. Kind of like how the law recognizes a newborn baby as a person, it doesn't make them one.
Okay, so now we've got our two heavyweights. In one corner, the idea that power flows down from the state. In the other, the idea that it grows up from the group itself. Let's put them head to head.
This really lays it all out, doesn't it? For the concession theory, the source of personality is the state. The group's status is totally dependent. It has to be granted. It's all about state supremacy. But for the realist theory, the source is reality itself. The group's status is inherent. It's automatic. This one's all about group autonomy. Two totally different ways of looking at the world.
So, you might be thinking, is the concession theory foolproof? Well, like with most big theories, when you start poking at it, you find some cracks. And it makes you wonder, is the state's power really as absolute as this theory makes it out to be?
Because when you actually look at legal history, you find stuff that just doesn't fit. The theory hits a major snag when you look at English common law, for example. It has this long history of recognizing groups that were never explicitly created by the state.
And this is a genuine puzzle. You've got these corporations in England that seem to have just existed for centuries, with no official charter from the king or parliament. That's a huge problem for the concession theory, right? So its supporters came up with a pretty clever workaround. They call it the lost grant argument. They basically say, oh, an official royal grant must have existed at some point. We just lost it. It's a convenient explanation, to say the least.
But that whole lost grant thing really shows you how deep this debate goes. It proves that this question, where does legal personality come from, is far from settled. It's this constant tug of war between a neat, tidy legal theory and, well, messy reality.
And that brings us back to the main event. Two powerful opposing ideas. Is legal personality a gift handed down from the state, or is it a bottom-up fact of life that the law just has to acknowledge?
So in the end, this leaves us with a pretty big question to chew on. Because this isn't just some dusty old legal theory, right? It's a live debate that's shaping our world right now. So I'll leave you with this. Who do you think really decides who has power? Is it the state writing the rules, or is it the powerful groups that actually make up our society?